Let's have a look at this video. I might have spoiled the plot of Natlan, Genshin Impact Theory. Oh dear god.
Hello, hope you're doing well. So this is going to be a bit of a divergence from the kind of stuff I usually make, and in all honesty, right now I'm not even quite sure what form this video is going to end up taking.
Are you British? I think he's British.
But what actually is today's topic? Well, I'm glad you asked. As you may already know, a couple of my recent videos have been Genshin Impact related. Specifically, I tried to make a few original character designs for each of the game's elements. I'll try and put a link on screen for those videos, by the way, if you do want to check them out, because I
hell? Holy shit. I like this one. That is pretty sick. That is actually pretty sick. I really like the Electro one.
But that's not the point.
Okay.
The point is, I am nothing if not thorough, or at least I try to be, when it comes to making characters. So, in order to make those fan-made Genshin characters look authentic, I did a fair bit of research into Genshin's elements and characters and nations, just a whole lot of lore. And to make a long story short, I have been just unable to stop thinking about one particular finding that I found as part of that research. I'm really no expert in game theorizing or anything like that.
It's a game theory.
Whatsoever. So really, I've kind of just been full-on Shane Medeing it out here, connecting dots on a corkboard full of Genshin trivia. But in doing so, I think, tentatively, that I may have accidentally predicted the upcoming plot of the game. To put that more specifically, I think I know who the next Archon is going to be, or at least what their deal is, and in turn, what the main story is going to revolve around when we eventually arrive in the game's next chapter, in the as-yet unexplored nation of Natlan.
Okay.
Which is a bold claim.
I'm interested.
I know, not least of all because we barely know anything about Natlan at the moment, and there have only really been a couple of mentions of the Pyro Archon at all throughout the entirety of Genshin's story so far. But even though realistically I don't think we're even going to be able to go to Natlan and meet the next Archon and play through that upcoming part of the story until probably like late next year, you never know when or how new lore is going to get dropped in this game. So I wanted to make this video now and kind of...
That's a very good point. It could be literally anywhere in Genshin. Artifacts, descriptions, world quests, randomly exploring, anywhere.
Place my bets while this prediction of what could be coming up next is fresh in my mind, because I do genuinely believe that I may have, at least to some degree, cracked some kind of code here and stumbled onto what could be a pretty solid theory.
You're blueballing me now. It's been 3 minutes. I'm so interested.
Theory which, by the way, I've genuinely not seen discussed or mentioned before anywhere. Not even by, like, full-time Genshin theorists who actually know what they're talking about. Which is maybe an indicator that I'm completely off the mark, but hey, it could also be an indicator that I've stumbled onto a new discovery. Could go either way. Which is another big part of why I wanted to open up a little bit of a dialogue with you guys here, to just be like, hey, is this anything?
Tell us!
Yeah, potential spoiler warning ahead in several different capacities, but now presenting my predictions for the next nation in Genshin and also the Pyro Archon and probably a couple of other things as well. We're gonna find out.
That's a long title.
Let's go.
Damn.
Alright, so I'm going to be moving forward here based on the assumption that you lovely folks watching at home do have at least a baseline, like, surface level of familiarity with Genshin and the events that take place in it. But you are of course welcome to stick around even if you've never played Genshin before in your life. It's just, you know, fair warning, certain parts of this might make no sense whatsoever, and I am about 40% more likely to sound like an increasingly insane person the further I get into this. But if that's the kind
to get into it, we've got to get into the start first.
The video essay adjacent energy that you're in the mood for this fine morning, afternoon, or evening, then welcome, come along, walk with me.
Thanks.
Now, like I say, this kind of game theorizing is honestly a fair bit beyond my usual wheelhouse, so I am still kind of trying to figure out the best way to unravel it all and make it make sense.
That makes sense.
Now, I think it's probably best to start off with what we do already know about Natlan and the Pyro Archon.
Nothing.
So, like I say, at the time of me making this, we really don't have a lot to go on in terms of canonical in-game information about either the nation of Natlan or its Archon, but I have managed to put together a rough outline based on the small amount of trivia that we do have available.
The talking
First of all, the Pyro Archon is the god of Natlan, and wields the power of Pyro. In the official Genshin Impact webcomic, Venti recalls that the Pyro Archon's name is Murata, and that she is known as both the Lady of Fire and the Lady of War.
Yes.
He also notes that warriors from every tribe used to perform rites of combat and celebrate victories in her name, so it's safe to assume that Murata was at least well known by the people of Natlan at that time. However, in that same conversation, another character informs us that the people of Natlan, or at least a small number of them who are known specifically as the Children of Murata, have in fact been wandering without any knowledge of their own Archon for so many generations that they don't even recognize Murata's name. Therefore, it's pretty reasonable to assume that something probably happened between the time period that Venti recalls and the time period portrayed in that webcomic. Speaking of which, it's also important to note that the events of that webcomic took place around 1,000 years before the events of the game's story as we're currently playing through it, and that nowadays Natlan is regarded far and wide as a nation that is very dangerous to enter because it is constantly at war, with New Valette even describing its current state as an endless ring of war in one of the game's most recent story quests. Natlan is also regarded as the nation of dragons, but truth be told, that's not really an aspect that I'm going to be focusing on
that's the most interesting aspect
today, because anything to do with the dragons in Genshin could honestly take up several videos worth of time all on its own. So that's the past and present at least partially accounted for. But what about the future? Well, as it happens, there is one quite large canonical hint about what's coming up that has been available to us ever since the game's release.
Gonna say something about the Teyvat Trails storyline teaser?
Namely, the Travail promotional video from 2020, which gave a very vague preview for the storyline of every chapter of Genshin in advance. This video does also show us an example of what a character who hails from Natlan actually looks like, but based on the fact that none of the other characters shown in this video have ended up being the Archon of the chapter that they're there to preview, as well as the fact that Natlan's Children of Murata are specifically described in the webcomic as people blessed with red hair, likely because it's a trait that Murata may have too, it's safe to assume that
God, I hope so.
The white-haired chibi in the Travail video is probably not the Pyro Archon. Besides ruling out one person that the Pyro Archon is less likely to be, there is one line of voiceover from the section about Natlan in that video that really stood out to me as a potential clue as to their story. Namely, where it says,
imagine, how would you all feel if Vanessa was resurrected, chat? I mean, it'd have to make sense story-wise, and I really doubt that'd be the case, but if the auto-resurrection was for Vanessa, how interested would you be at that point? And then obviously it still goes back to the manga. It's like Sino goes back to the manga as well. Be interesting, right?
The rules of war are woven in the womb. The victors shall burn bright, while the losers must turn to ash. Like I say, this is the nation of war, and we're going to be dealing with the god of war, so the fact that there's going to be some kind of warfare-related plot is kind of a given, right? And this quote definitely lends some credence to that. But there is another layer to it that I
Signora's a loser.
think is going to help to narrow down exactly what that war is going to be about. I'm going to put a pin in that for now though. We're going to come back to it, don't worry. But in order to explain why that one quote stood out to me so much, I want to pivot from stuff that we may or may not know to be true about the Pyro Archon to things that we know to be true about Archons in general. In particular, the relation that each Archon has to the characters that utilize their respective element, because that connection could very well be the key to figuring out what's going to happen in Natlan.
I hope this is a perfect friend to pause on, because I hope they don't talk about Farina.
Now, obviously the main factor for someone being granted an elementally infused vision derived from an Archon's power in the first place is that that person must simply have a strong desire or a passion for something that's powerful enough to reach the heavens, as it tends to be phrased within the game itself.
Yes.
But that's not the important part here. Rather, I want to focus in a bit more on the specifics. As part of my research for previous videos, I ended up looking into the potential reasons why a character might receive a vision of any given element in particular. Like, why does this person have an Animo vision while this person
Dead friends.
has a Hydro one, for example?
Probably not the haircut.
Where does the difference lie, and what is the common factor that marks any character as a candidate for any one element over another? Many people tend to theorize quite reasonably, because there's plenty of evidence for this in the game as far as I'm aware, that it all revolves around the dreams and abilities that led to a character earning their vision in the first place. Like, if they have academic aspirations, they'll get a Dendro vision, for instance. But while
I mean, academic is sure.
I don't think that's completely wrong by any measure. At least to me, that angle doesn't always add up. Not least of all because of characters like Lisa, Sucrose, or Farah.
I also don't think really Nahida would have academic, I don't know.
Tarzan. All characters with immense dedication to their academic pursuits, but none of whom possess a Dendro vision like you'd expect them to based on that line of thinking.
It seems to me they look at their clothing and go, have this vision, it'll look cool.
Some other folks prefer to interpret that a character will earn their vision because they stand for the same things as the Archon of that.
Also, why do they wear the same clothes every day, actually? Have we ever thought about that? Do they ever wash? I bet everyone fucking stinks.
Element, like how the Anemo Archon is known as the god of freedom, and characters like Kazuha and Jean fight for the freedom of many people.
True.
This is another take that doesn't always hold up though, because for instance, while the Geo Archon is the god that presides over contracts, the only characters in the game who have canonically been to law school, which you would think by that reasoning would make them the perfect candidates for a Geo vision, are
Ito did not go to law school, I'm sorry.
instead wielders of Pyro and Electro. Now, before I go on, I do want to make it clear that I'm not trying to say that my own ideas of how visions might get divvied out is completely flawless, because I do not doubt that there are any number of holes that could be poked in my theories too. But I would still like to present my own take on the matter as an alternative way to interpret things, at least for the purposes of puzzling together a clearer picture of what might be going on with the Pyro Archon. With that in mind, I would personally argue that the reason that characters in Genshin are given the power of whatever specific element it is that they end up wielding, like the baseline criteria for them to qualify for wielding one element rather than any other, is because their individual backstory shares elements with the backstory of that element's Archon. They have been through similar things, to put it simply.
What the hell could Ito and Zhongli have been through together? Does make sense for Anemo, kind of, but not always. I don't think Sucrose has had like a loss of a friend or anything related to Venti, right? I don't think.
Kind of like, even though I believe it's been made clear in the game that the Archons won't even...
Oh, she has? Sucrose has no friends? Well, that doesn't mean they died, though.
necessarily know who it is that their power is being granted to when visions are given out. I think another way to phrase it would be that, like, if an Anemo character ever met the Anemo Archon and they really got to know each other, both the Archon and the Vision Wielder would be like, I can sympathize with this person to some degree because I've been in a similar situation myself. As an example, I think most people are aware by now of the joke about how almost every Anemo character will have a dead friend or missing loved one, and that is actually true. I double checked, and not only is that actually very accurate, but also indeed reflective of the experiences of the Anemo Archon himself, Venti. He
Is it true for every Anemo character? Even Jean?
Personally lost a close friend and ended up taking on that friend's appearance, effectively living on in their stead. Likewise, every single Anemo character will have some kind of backstory.
Wanderer definitely. Sayu? Who the hell is Sayu lose? Or Faruzan? Sayu lost her teacher. Oh god.
Story that mentions the loss or potential loss of a loved one, and they will more often...
Faruzan's family, didn't know about that. Hazel's friend knew about that. Vaka. Odd stretch. He's not lost in that sense. Tomo, yes. Linny? For Lynette? Linny's right next to her 90% of the time. Sayu's sensei, Sucrose's friend, Wanderer's friend, fellow Yaksha. I think they all make sense other than Vaka and Linny.
Than not either be
unless it's saying that Linny's gonna die.
Trying to live up to their legacy, or will carry some kind of memento to remember them by.
Lost for a while doesn't have to be dead. I would argue if Vaka's not lost. Potential loss is a thing. Potential loss is for every fucking character, dude. That's... No. Not for this theory, I don't think.
Than not either be...
He said scared that they might lose them? Yeah, but that could be for every character, though. That could be for so many characters that they're scared to lose someone. Kuki could be scared to lose the Arataki gang. Ito could be scared to lose the Arataki gang. Zhongli could be scared to lose everyone else that doesn't share the memories anymore. Fucking Diluc could be scared to lose Kaya. Kaya could be scared to lose Diluc. Who else? Diona could be scared to lose her dad. There's everyone.
Backstory that mentions the loss or potential loss of a loved one, and they will more often than not either be trying to live up to their legacy or will carry some kind of memento to remember them by. Another example is the fact that I
really don't get the Liddy one most of all.
Hydro Archon Farina is something of a local celebrity with a backstage secret, not dissimilar to Hannah Montana. Meanwhile, every Hydro character so far has been someone with both a reputation and either a penchant for revealing the truth, or a personal secret that they would prefer to keep out of the public eye.
Yeah, kinda. I feel like Kokomi's secret stress is not that much of a secret. I feel like Tartaglia being a harbinger is only a secret to some, not as many people.
The same goes for all of the other elements so far in some way or another. From the Geo Archon story being centered on his time as a leader while every Geo character is themselves at the heart of a group or organization, to the his time as a leader while every Geo character is themselves at the heart of a group or organization.
At the heart of a group or organization.
Centered on his time as a leader while every Geo character is themselves at the heart of a...
Monster Alchemists, yes. Watatsumi Army, yes. Arataki Gang, yes. Espina de Rasula, yes. Was that Ningguang? Because if so, yes. Knights of Favonius, I wouldn't say Noelle's at the heart of the Knights of Favonius, but sure. Sure.
To the Electro Archon story revolving around her sister, while every Electro character will either have a sister or have ties to a specific female character that they're devoted to. Not to mention, will either have a sister or have ties to a specific
stretch. Big stretch for this one. This is the biggest stretch yet, for sure. For sure.
Female character that they're devoted to. Not to mention that we already know that the god of Cryo isn't exactly fond of her fellow gods.
She's also like the goddess of love or something, right?
While every Cryo character is also at odds with either themselves or their predecessors in some...
Oh my god. Why is Chi-Chi's just dead but alive? Jesus Christ. I like a lot of these, I just don't know. I don't think these are the reasons, personally.
I'm a little bit unsure about Dendro, because that one's hard to pin down, but I think it might have to do with having some kind of older and wiser female figure in their life.
Who's his Amber Collie? Yaimiko's is Karara's? I haven't read enough of her lore, I guess. But yeah, sure. Although, again, I would just argue same could be said for Diona, right? With her dad and the majority of other characters. They could have been Dendro as well. I don't know.
Figure in their life. Even if I am completely wrong on that particular one, though, the point still stands. If all the other characters' backstories do indeed mirror the experience of their element's Archon, which they do, then it stands to reason that we might be able to reverse engineer a prediction of the Pyro Archon story by finding the common thread that runs across the backstories of all of Genshin's Pyro characters.
I'm going to get them for you.
Good news is, I've already done that. And as it turns out, the Pyro Collective actually have some of the clearest, like, unanimous across-the-board traits woven throughout all of their backstories out of any elemental group in Genshin. So those common threads ended up being pretty easy to unravel, and honestly quite interesting to look into. I'm hereby pulling out the corkboard at this point because I really want to take a closer look at this because I find it fascinating, and show you guys the hidden connection between every single Pyro character in this game. So the first interpretation that I had based on my research for previous videos was that the majority of Pyro characters were the heir to some kind of family business. Obviously Diluc is out here with the entire Dawn Winery to his name, and then you've got Zhongling with the one-man restaurant. The list goes on.
The list goes on, does it? Those were the ones that popped into my head.
All very entrepreneurial, right? But technically, characters like Chongyun or Xingqiu could also be considered as the heir to a family business of some kind, and some of the Pyro characters themselves have completely diverted from their family's regular line of work.
Yeah, I was going to say, Xinyan is like the total opposite of that.
That kind of puts that theory out of the window.
Okay.
So what is it that actually sets the Pyro contingent apart and groups them together?
What?
Well, let's take a look and see if we can find any patterns. Starting off with the primary Pyro character that we encounter in the game both chronologically and alphabetically, Amber is Mondstadt's last remaining Outrider, a role that was previously held by her grandpa until he mysteriously went missing. Bennett is an adventurer, following so closely in the footsteps of his multiple retired dads that even the way that he acquired his vision is a one-to-one recreation of how they first found him as a baby. Dihya is a mercenary like her father before her, and Diluc is a wine merchant who moonlights.
Is it just going to go through their dads?
As a vigilante, like his father before him. Hu Tao became a funeral director after the previous director, her grandfather, passed on and she
Or maybe following in their father's footsteps.
Performed his last rites. Linny is both a magician and a Fatui agent who...
Didn't Linny's dad get rid of him? I don't think he's following it.
Works on missions for his father, Arlecchino.
Okay.
The Fatui...
No, you can't do that. That's not the same. You fucking hell.
Harbinger. Toma, meanwhile, went to Inazuma to find his father and ended up working as the Kamisato clan's housekeeper
That's not the same thing!
Instead. Zhongling works with her dad in their family restaurant, Xinyan is a rock and roll superstar, Yanfei is a lawyer, and Yoimiya works with her dad as a firework maker. Now, evidently, the most prominent pattern to be found here is, well, dads. Almost every single Pyro character has the same job as their father figure in some way or another. But only almost. The majority are following in the footsteps of their forefathers, but what about Xinyan? She may be a rock and roll superstar, but one of the few things that we do
where is Klee? We don't know Klee's dad, I guess.
Know about her family is that none of them are musicians. In fact, they even discouraged her from becoming one, which goes completely against that potential theme of abiding by your family heritage. Likewise, we don't really know what Toma's dad did for a job, only that he went missing, and Yunfei's father is an illuminated beast, and in all honesty, I don't know if they even really have jobs in the first place.
True.
However, we're not far off the mark. You see, after looking into their backstories in a bit more detail, I realized that there is another aspect to that fatherly factor, which actually does apply to every single one of these characters, namely that all of their respective father figures gave something. Effectively, my theory here is that the defining factor that qualifies a
gave something. You're going to say most of them gave their lives?
Character to receive a pyrovision specifically is that their backstory has to include an overarching theme of, appropriately enough considering the element in question, passing the torch from one generation to the next, whether by way of passing on a job, a physical item, a code of ethics, or all of the above. So let's take another look at things through that lens and see if it helps to bring everything a bit more full circle. First off, in Amber's backstory, when her grandpa is teaching her everything he knows about being an outrider, he says, maybe one day you will inherit this responsibility. Then, once he went missing,
and she did.
Notes that Amber wanted to show that she had inherited her grandpa's determination along with his former role. The elderly adventurer that originally found Bennett ended up passing away soon after, leaving him in the care of the adventurers who became his new dads. In this instance, Bennett himself would technically have been the thing that was inherited by the next generation after the elderly adventurer. That does make this a bit of an unusual case compared to the rest of these, but it still checks out with the theory in question. In Dia's case, her mercenary name Flamemane is actually based on a story that her father told her when she was young, although I think she actually ended up getting that as her mercenary name via a separate interaction. In her character quest, however, after her father goes missing and subsequently passes away, leaving behind only a toy sword from Dia's childhood, she also steps up to finish off the group that he died trying to take down.
Sword.
Other than the keys to Mondstadt's wine industry, Diluc first inherited his father's wish for him to become a knight, and then after his father died, Diluc became a vigilante by making use of a delusion that his father once owned.
The delusion.
Likewise, other than the Wangsheng funeral parlor itself, Hu Tao's philosophy of living in life and dying in death was also something left to her by her grandfather before he passed. In Linny's case, when he went to his father to ask for a delusion in order to help his sister, what he was given instead was a push in the right direction to snap him out of his self-destructive intentions and figure out a better plan. Toma's father may have been nowhere to be found when Toma went.
What would that be inherited though?
Intentions and figure out a better plan.
I guess a moral?
Toma's father may have been nowhere to be found when Toma went looking for him in Inazuma, but prior to that he instilled a devout sense of loyalty in Toma, which is what led to him working for the Kamisato clan and, if I remember correctly, even inheriting their historical family fighting techniques. Meanwhile, Zhongling's father gave her his entire life's work, in the form of a notebook filled with cooking notes and recipes, which she continues to fill with her own ideas to this day. Despite Xinyan's family being unsupportive of her rock and roll dreams, her father was the one and only relative to do something to actually encourage her goals, by giving her some spring water that she had been trying to find due to her belief that it would improve her singing voice. Originally, I thought it may have been the—
Didn't he scam her with that? Wait, am I remembering wrong from the Golden Apple? I thought it was just normal water.
She had been trying to find due to—
Yes. Yeah, I don't believe this. Yeah, this one doesn't make any sense. That it was just fake water.
Her belief that it would improve her singing voice.
He scammed her.
Originally, I thought it may have been the case that Yanfei's father, being an illuminated beast, may have given her some kind of inherent appreciation of contracts, since the majority of illuminated beasts from her father's generation all signed contracts with the god of Geo. But, as it turns out, her father actually did give her something far more tangible, the legal weighing scales that feature in both her splash art and backstory. Yoimiya's father, as I mentioned before, has retired as the head of Naganohara Fireworks, stepping down and leaving its management and future up to her.
Why 936 quality though? Because it's just as good as 1080p for the most part, and it also reduces bitrate for Genshin when you're doing combat, so it doesn't go all pixelated on the screen. It's just better.
We'll have to wait and see if Chevreuse and any other future Pyro characters keep this trend going when they become available in future updates, but for now, as you can see, every single Pyro character that's currently available in the game has a backstory which hinges on a father figure passing something down to them.
Klee. Is there any other Pyro characters that I missed off of here? Klee's doesn't make any sense, actually. Klee wouldn't make any sense on this list, because we don't know who Klee's dad is, and I don't think Klee's dad ever left her or anything, right? So I don't know.
Or rather, I should say, this would be applicable to every single Pyro character in the game if it wasn't...
Oh.
For Klee, the keen-eared among you may have already clocked that I have neglected to mention a certain Spark Knight up until this point, and that is because at this point in time, we don't know anything about Klee's father. Her backstory only mentions that he's an adventurer who is currently off traveling with Klee's mother, Alice, who happens to be someone who plays a much more significant part in both Klee's backstory and the story of Genshin in general.
True.
At the very least, if I'm being particularly wishful in my thinking, the jury may potentially still be out as to whether there's yet more information to be revealed about
Please be Pulcinella.
Klee's dad, which may contribute to my every Pyro character has to have had a significant inheritance from a father figure theory. But for now, this little pyromaniac's lack of paternal interaction is kind of blowing my entire theory to smithereens. Or
Good shit.
is it? Because not to sound unhinged, even though this definitely is what this is going to sound like, but another way to look at the fact that Klee is the one and only outlier here is simply as another clue to the potential truth of the matter. You see, Klee's mother, Alice, is known in the universe of Genshin to be a very powerful witch, operating as both a...
But I guess at the same time, why couldn't you, if you're going to say Arlecchino is Linny's father figure, you could just say Alice is also Klee's father figure at that point, right? I don't like the Arlecchino one because I feel like that's the one that doesn't make sense compared to everything else. That's the one that doesn't make sense compared to everything else for me.
A member of the Hexen Circle and as a popular author of adventurers' travel guides. Klee's backstory mentions that her mother is the one who gave her beloved plush toy Dodoko, which Klee now brings along as a companion for all of her own explosive travels. And Klee's backstory also mentions verbatim that Klee wants to follow in her mother's footsteps and grow up to be just like her. All that to say, Klee's mum Alice, while being very much a mother figure rather than anything fatherly, still fulfills the role of being a parental predecessor who gives their descendants something important and inspirational. So clearly, while it remains the most common occurrence...
If Arlecchino was a man instead, it makes sense just fine, though. True, but this is the whole point, though. He's like specifically talking about a father, not a mother.
Inheriting something from a father figure...
If it was just... father figure. If it was just parental figure, then it would make more sense, but... That's not the wording used, and I feel like that's intentionally.
Specifically, isn't necessarily the key factor in whether a character will align with Pyro or not, after all.
Arlecchino is a father, though. Arlecchino's fucking codename is father, dude. It's not... It's very, very different, I feel like.
Instead, it would seem to be the case that this idea of passing the torch, which does feature in the lore of every single Pyro character so far, instead needs to involve...
Wait, he just changed it to parental?
Or not, after all. Instead, it would seem to be the case that this idea of passing the torch, which does feature in the lore of every single Pyro character so far, instead needs to involve the most high-ranking member of their family. Whoever is king or...
But then also... Still a fucking tough one, though, because then are you talking about Linny's... When you say family, are you talking about Linny's biological family who gave him up, or are you talking about Arlecchino, who's technically not family at all, just...
Indeed, queen of the castle, so to speak. Even prior to this addendum about Klee's mum, though, the nature of Linny's father figure already goes to show that this whole intergenerational passing of the torch doesn't actually hinge on anybody's...
Bennett was also not biological, though? No, according to him, Bennett was the thing that was inherited, though, so that doesn't matter. That's what he said. He would say Bennett was the outlier of the whole thing.
Physical gender, or their fatherhood. Instead, it really just comes down to whoever is wearing the
parental figure definitely makes more sense if it's just parental figure, not parent.
Proverbial pants in the family, and holds the most non-proverbial power or experience. As much fun as I had puzzling all of that together, though, what does all of that actually...
Well, yeah, what does this have to do with Natlan?
mean when it comes to the potential identity of the Pyro Archon, and how in the hell has figuring out that very character-centric connection given me any indication of why Natlan might be at war?
I don't know.
That brings me to my actual predictions. Based on the fact that every single Pyro character is accompanied by that theme of having a predecessor or parent effectively
Is he going to say it's going to be Murata's, like, daughter or son?
Clearing the way for them to step into their power, either by passing the torch or figuratively stepping down from the throne in some way, I think that the war in Natlan is going to be a war of succession, with the role of Pyro Archon potentially being a seat of power that is constantly changing hands. There are a ton of directions that could take, and honestly, if even just one part of what I'm thinking here ends up being accurate, I'm going to be so proud of myself. But let me go through a couple more bits and pieces that do contribute to that idea. I mentioned before that in the webcomics, the so-called Children of Murata had been wandering godless for many generations. We don't currently know how or why that ended up happening, but if this theory of mine holds true, it may potentially be the case that, seeing as how Natlan is a nation made up of many different tribes, when there is a fight for the position of Pyro Archon, the tribe that follows the losing contender is exiled, which again, if true, would also mean that
exiled where though? We've never fucking seen anyone.
Murata would have long since lost both her position as the Pyro Archon and potentially her life itself by the time of the events that take place in the Genshin webcomic. Additionally, the item description for one of the pyro-related level-up materials in the game, Agnatus Agate,
exiled like died? Well, exiled doesn't mean died though, right?
Goes as follows: a pilgrimage for a wish, a battle to earn a name, burnt to cinders for a dream. Supposedly, this is actually narrated by the current Pyro Archon, which is interesting enough in itself, but the part that stands out to me here are the lines pilgrimage for a wish and battle to earn a name. Natlan is also surrounded by a lot of themes relating to phoenixes and rising from the ashes, so hearing pilgrimage for a wish makes me think that if, again, Murata did indeed go up in smoke over 1,000 years ago, another reason that the Muratan tribe may have begun wandering in the first place could have been with the goal of finding a way to wish Murata back into existence. Either way, however, the battle to earn a name line definitely feels like it leans into that idea of the title of Pyro Archon being something that can indeed be inherited or passed on to the next generation through combat. I am curious as to whether that may even pan out to be kind of a Dread Pirate Robert situation like in The Princess Bride, where potentially the Pyro Archon has technically always been Murata, but only because whenever somebody new claims the throne,
they take the name.
They take on that name along with it, in a never-ending line of different Archons, all known as Murata.
Oh god, okay. As interesting as this theory is, I don't buy it for one reason. There's literally only one reason why I don't buy this. And I swear to God, it is literally just one. At least right now. How would no one have spoken about this before if this has been happening for years? How would no other Archon know about it? How would the Hexen Circle not know about it? Why wouldn't Celestia have done something about it? What? I don't know. It sounds very cool, but... And it would make sense based on it being the nation of war and having so many tribes and stuff, but how would nobody have, like, discussed that that's going on? You know? I don't know. That's what I think anyway.
Another thing I mentioned earlier that I said I would come back to is that one line from the Travail video. The rules of war are woven in the womb. The victors shall burn bright while the losers must turn to ash.
Woven in the womb? What the fuck does that mean? Interesting.
I'm aware that this wording is
inherent to human nature,
specific to the English translation, but the mention of anything to do with a womb definitely harkens back to that whole parental theme. On top of that, the whole victors and losers burning bright or turning to ash aspect is another detail that feels like it circles back to those previous points about people either claiming the power of Pyro or going up in smoke, and potentially being able to be resurrected from those ashes like a phoenix. It's probably worth noting that the title of this chapter, as mentioned in the Travail video, also mentions
what if they just found a way that when people die, they resurrect into dragons, and that's why it's the land of dragons, and it's not phoenixes, it's just dragons?
Resurrection. Unfortunately, I cannot for the life of me find where I originally heard this from, but I did also hear a rumor some time ago that...
Is this where we stop because of the rumors that... Wait, Ken, what did you say about this? You say it wasn't actually leaks or anything? It was based on, like, IRL stuff with the rumors? She said it was fine to watch, so let's have a look.
There were actually going to be 2 Pyro Archons in the Natlan chapter, and...
I don't know about this. Ken, is this safe to watch after this point or no? Yes? This sounds sus already, dude. This sounds sus as fuck already. He does say it's rumor, but it's literally just a theory based on the Maya civilization.
They would be siblings. You never know how accurate leaks and rumors are going to be.
You sure, Ken?
But if that one does hold any...
Yes? He literally just said.
Credence, I do think it would be really interesting to see 2 characters who are perhaps the actual descendants of either the current or previous Pyro Archon duking it out to see who is the most deserving of inheriting their parents' throne. I am personally inclined to at least be hopeful that that might be a story element that will come into play, because based on some official artwork, one of the real-life geographical inspirations for Natlan...
There's no leaks on Natlan lore yet, I looked it up.
...seems to be Mexico, a region with Mayan heritage, and Mayan history seems to have a lot of mythology featuring twins and siblings. When it comes to what the Pyro Archon that we do encounter is actually going to be like and their intentions, the only canon clue that we really...
He doesn't know what... I don't know what he calls them. Yeah, one big tip, especially for theory YouTubers, don't call speculations leaks if they're not leaks. That's bad.
We have is one of Venti's voice lines, where he describes the Pyro Archon as a wayward warmongering wretch.
Oh, wow.
However, this same voice line describes the Geo Archon as a brutish, blundering buffoon.
Yeah, I mean, he was, right, in the Archon War.
Which is something that we as players know not to be true.
No, he was fucked up in the Archon War. Zhongli was wild, dude.
Because Zhongli is in fact quite wise.
Yet now...
A fact that he will remind you of at length every time you put your controller down for a...
Yeah, but just remember when he murdered thousands upon thousands upon thousands of other people and other gods. Like, he was going crazy, dude. Didn't Zhongli literally go fucking bloodthirsty sicko mode in the Archon War and get like a fucking AC 130 kill streak?
Warmongering description of the Pyro Archon may be worth taking with a grain of salt, because it could be about as accurate as that description of Zhongli.
It's accurate. That description of Zhongli is accurate. Just past Zhongli.
Anyway, that was a lot.
That was a lot.
But to summarize, my bet is that some kind of parental passing of the torch to a new generation is going to be a key factor in the story of the Natlan chapter. And likewise, that those kind of themes are going to carry some heavy weight in the story of the Pyro Archon themselves. I also think it's worth considering that Natlan itself may have a centuries-long tradition of tribal warfare and ritual combat, specifically with the power and title of the Pyro Archon as the prize.
The way that I can see that being a thing, by the way, chat, hear me out, of the seat of the Archon being whoever wins and loses, right? I can definitely see that being a thing, but the only way it makes sense to me is if the current Archon just has not been defeated in literally so fucking long that people wouldn't question it. And maybe that's why Capitano's being sent to defeat the Archon. Then it would make sense. Just because nobody's been strong enough to defeat this current Archon and they've been in power for so long. I think that would make sense.
Or if nothing else, that there will be some kind of arena in which the Pyro Archon must defend their title as the Pyro Archon, and the gnosis that they draw their power from along with it. And if that does end up being the case, I can't help but wonder how the next Fatui Harbinger that we're going to meet may end up playing into all of that. As for the Pyro Archon themselves, whoever they may be, I do not think that they are the first or even second to hold that position. But if they somehow are, then I think they will have had to fight to retain their title like a professional wrestler trying to keep their belt for hundreds of years. And finally, even though this is mostly wishful thinking on my part based on various rumors that I've heard around the place, it would be very...
Okay, I really do like the idea. I really do like the idea of that being a thing.
Very interesting if we do indeed end up meeting the descendant of the Pyro Archon, whether in the form of an individual character who either already inherited the title from their parent.
Power being passed on? Yeah, but not by a parental figure, exactly. It's by an Archon that they don't like because they're trying to take the power away. I don't know.
Always aiming to inherit it, or alternatively in the form of multiple characters both vying for the throne in some way or other. Especially because, for reasons relating to Fontaine spoilers, it may even prove to be possible for...
This would make a lot of sense because don't forget, chat, there is a lot of duality in Archons, remember. Obviously with Farina and Focalor, with Raiden Shogun and Makoto, with Venti and the Sprite. There is a lot of duality, so having two people fighting up for the throne, like Archon A and Archon B, would make sense.
For them to both end up...
Zhongli and Grisong, maybe, yeah, kinda. More so Zhongli and Ashihara, I would say. Maybe, I don't know, or both.
Sharing the throne together as a team. I don't know when this video is going to come out exactly, but if you are seeing this after the 4.3 update, then please let me know in the comments if the new Pyro character does indeed stay on theme and have some kind of father figure in their backstory. And hey, other than that, please do join in with the theorizing here. Hell, you can even feel free to float this by any actual full-time Genshin theorists if you'd like to. I just want to know, do you guys think that this theory actually holds any water, or fire, or whatever element it might be? I don't really know if there are any other clues that I might have missed which add to the likelihood of any of this happening, or indeed if there's anything else that you guys might know which completely disproves everything that I've said today. Because again, I am very aware that I could be a million miles off the mark, so for the most part,
No, I really like the theory. I think it was as this board looks a little all over the place, but you kind of have to be a little all over the place with theories sometimes, especially when it's about shit that we have no information about. Like, come on. But yeah, I don't know. I do like the theory. Again, I think it could definitely be true. It just depends. There was a lot of holes in it, but it just depends on how long the current Pyro Archon has been on their throne for. If they've been on their throne for a very long time, and nobody has been able to beat them, then it makes sense. And then that's why Capitano's going, because he'd be rank 1 Harbinger, the strongest of them all, to be able to kill them and take the throne in the No-Seas. If the sea is constantly changing, as in every year or couple of years, the whole thing falls apart for me personally. It really does.
I'm just open to discussion on all of this. Whatever does end up happening when we do eventually get to visit Natlan, though, I hope you've had as much.
I just think Celestia would have an issue with it, and I don't know.
Fun
I feel like people would hear about it.
Analysis with me today as I did puzzling it all together. Oh, and by the way, I know this was a bit of a different kind of format for me than usual, but rest assured I will be returning to my regularly scheduled programming in the new year, so don't worry. But on the flip side, if you guys do want to see more incredibly specific, hyper-focused video essay type stuff like this in the future, just let me know, because I certainly wouldn't be adverse to doing this again. But for now, in any case, thank you so much again for tuning in, and I hope you all keep on staying as safe, happy, and healthy as you possibly can. Also, happy holidays. I think this is coming out around the holiday time, so Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, everyone.
What the fuck? This is like a really nice guy. I actually like I like that video. It's very, very good. I will sub to the channel, definitely. And yeah, chat, make sure you go check it out. Here it is. Very interesting theory. Very interesting theory. I don't know how much I believe it completely, but I mean, it was interesting. It was very interesting.